What's going on? You're watching the Dropout 704 podcast. You are here with your host, Samaj Sinclair. This video is a little more personal, right? As you can see from the title of the video, this is about rebuilding my faith in God, again. It's been a back and forth, up and down relationship, because it's a relationship. I've been a toxic partner at times, I'll be honest, we're all sinners, that's a part of understanding the journey. So why am I making this video? I'm making this video because in talking to people or hearing other people's stories, I find a lot of things that I have in common where initially maybe I thought I was a little more alone in these feelings or thoughts and ideas, and just hearing more perspectives that I felt resonated with my experience was helpful. Or even hearing perspectives that were very different than my experiences was also helpful in just the understanding everything as a whole, how it plays in your life and your faith and everything like that, right? And this video is for anyone who I would say is having a back and forth struggle, who is feeling like, oh, sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm there, sometimes I feel like people got the term like lukewarm, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe you're not always there. So, yeah, this is just my upbringing, the back and forths, and what landed me there and what landed me to where I am today. So, was I raised religious? So, both of my parents went to church, but they weren't going together, By the time I was born, my parents were not together, so it's not like they were divorced, like they just like weren't together. But by that time, my dad was very, very in his Bible. Like, I don't know if he was newer in his faith, and that's why, but he was, he was about it, you know what I'm saying? Like, when I was younger, I don't really remember my dad, like, dating or, just doing much outside of church, Bro was going to work and going to church. Every time I saw my dad, like, for the most part, church was involved in some capacity, you know what I'm saying? And my mom and that side of the family was always God-fearing, like, grandma would go to church, but, like, my grandpa didn't, and my mom, like, would go sometimes, I would go sometimes, but, like, when I was with my mom, it wasn't something that was, like, forced, or, like, expected. Where, like, with my dad, on the other hand, it was very, like, hey, this is what you doing. If you at my house, this is a part of what we got going on over here, right? And so you might wonder who I lived with and how was it. So I primarily lived with my mom and my grandparents, and they weren't, like I said, they weren't forcing nothing down my throat, making me do this or making me do that. Everything was pretty laxed in terms of that, and like I said, still very God fearing, like respected God, like Christian, but religious practices weren't as heavy. And I would see my dad on weekends. If you're someone who, maybe you are someone, or if you're not, then you'll get some perspective. If your parents aren't together but they live close enough, then, like, you'll see one certain amount of days and the other certain amount of days. There wasn't necessarily like a clean cut, like, hey, these are the days that I'm over here, I'm over there. But I did see my dad pretty frequently. We only lived, I would say, like 30 minutes apart, at that time. At that time, I was living in Paterson, New Jersey, you know what I'm saying? And at that time, I think my dad was living in Irvington. So, like, I would see him often. And our church was in Patterson, so like it was easy to see him around church and whatnot too, right? So yeah, I would see my dad a lot on like the weekends, you know, if I wasn't going to school per se, any sort of school break, like, you know, I would see him a lot in the summer, spring break, you know, winter break, things like that. So pretty much weekends and holidays. So I would say I saw both my parents pretty frequently. And I grew up in a Pentecostal church. So, if you guys know anything about Pentecostal churches, you know that they are lit. They are very radical in their beliefs, you know what I'm saying? That's the type where you know, they playing the music, and you got the ladies dancing, you know what I'm saying? Like people speaking in tongues, you know what I'm saying? You got to dress up nice every Sunday. Like you got to make sure your clothes is ironed. Like you gotta make sure you looking nice. You know what I'm saying? You got your tie on. You know what I'm saying? Your belt. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta look good. Your hair combed. Like you gotta just look presentable. You know what I'm saying? And you get there early. You know, we pulling up like 9, 10 o'clock because you got Sunday school, which is before church. So you got to pull up early to make it to Sunday school. And then after Sunday school, you're going to get into the service. But before the service, you got the praise and worship. And that's when everyone's singing and stuff. Sunday school is where they're just like teaching you like a message. And usually you're sitting in smaller groups with people around your age. So there's Sunday school, and then you got the service starting, but that's like the praise and worship where you singing songs and like you singing for a minute. Like you gotta stand for the songs too. That was always the part that got me. I'm like, bro, I gotta stand for this. Like, my feet hurt, but yeah, you gotta stand for the songs. We're singing. You know, I don't even know how long exactly, but then we going into the preaching, and you know, if you got a preacher who getting into it, then like they preaching for a minute, you know what I'm saying? Like you getting into the preaching. And then after that, we gonna do during and after the preaching, you're gonna have a couple more songs. You're gonna have the altar call, you know what I'm saying? Where like you can come up, get prayer, give your life to Christ, all this. And then during that's gonna be a couple more songs too during that altar call. And then after that, boom, that's when the service is over. But you can't just skate, you know what I'm saying? That's like rude. You gotta go talk to the people who you gotta talk to, you know what I'm saying? And then you go home, eat your dinner, and then you got Sunday night service. You get what I'm saying? And then on top of that, you got like Friday night service, which is like youth night, you know, that's where you got the youth night. And then sometimes you got like a Wednesday night or something, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't too crazy for us, but like, yeah, that was pretty much the lineup. And when I was younger, growing up in that environment was normal because it was all I knew. But it was interesting. I had a understanding of Christ. I knew Jesus loved me, but I still had so much anxiety about going to hell. And it's strange because I vividly remember being like 10, but 9, 10, 11-ish, right? But I vividly remember the thought of being like, if I die before I'm 12, then I'll automatically go to heaven. Because I remember at that time, like, what really made me think that was like, maybe I shouldn't have been cursing as a 10-year-old, whatever. But like, I heard people curse. So like, curse words or something I was like, oh, you know, when you're kids, you curse amongst each other sometimes. Or, and then I was like, what if I think it? And then they were like, yeah, even if you think these sins, like, it's like you sinned. And I was just like, at that time I felt like I had such little control over like that inner dialogue that is your mind, your consciousness, you know what I'm saying? At that time I couldn't articulate what it is, but I knew that like the voice in my head is a lot harder to control than my mouth. You get what I'm saying? And then I just always felt I had such anxiety that I was just like, I'm gonna go to hell. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, if I'm lucky, I will die before 12. And that was such a weird thing, you know, because it made my relationship with God very fear-based. You know, I was very afraid of God. It felt kind of like the relationship I had with my dad, because I wasn't afraid of my dad like, oh, he was going to beat me up or nothing like that. Like, that was never the type of dad that I have, you know what I'm saying? It was more so like, if I did something, if I was afraid of sinning, not just from God, but like my dad. So it was just like, I'm like, if my dad's this serious, like, God is even like more serious. You know what I'm saying? Like, my dad's so against it. It's because our Heavenly Father is even more against it. So if I get in this much trouble with my dad, like, what would God do to me? You know what I'm saying? So like, and I'll say, like, my dad was a very present dad, but he was a more present Christian, which, though I have, you know, it upset me at times, and I'll get into that. I also, it was like a double-edged sword, because I'm like, at the same time, like, he's just trying to get into heaven himself. Because at the end of the day, regardless of where I make it, he still wants to go to heaven. You know what I'm saying? So he was, yeah, very, very, very Bible-y kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? At the time, and where he was in his faith, and etc. You know, so that did have an effect on my life growing up. As I got older, I felt a bit of a disconnection with my dad, which also led into the disconnection with God, because I felt like God and my dad were like this. So if one of them didn't like me, the other didn't, which is such a weird mentality. But this is at this time in my faith. I'm still younger. I'm probably around. I'm in my earlier teens. So this is also the times where you're going through puberty. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're liking girls, stuff like this. But I actually couldn't really talk to my family and stuff about that, because they were all pretty Christian, you know what I'm saying? So that was something that didn't come up. Or even if like it came up with my mom, she'd be like, "You, if your dad find out," like, that was the thing. Everybody knew my dad. Like, everybody knew how he was, you know? Like, I do respect it, though. It makes me, I think that's how I'm able to be very proud and who I am in my decisions and my beliefs. But that's how he was. And I'm his son. So people were kind of like, bro, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it was kind of like something that was following me. So yeah, it kind of made me grow disconnected, because I felt like I couldn't come to people for advice, because the advice would be like, you don't need to be doing that. You know, like, if I have, oh, I like this girl, blah, blah, blah. Can't really go talk about that. Or like, oh, I got this problem with this like, just, it just wasn't really that. So I kind of started taking matters into my own hands. You know what I'm saying? And after a while, I started having a little more anger towards God because of this. In the sense of, I felt like my dad wouldn't be around me if I was sinful, and that's what God wanted him to be doing. And then because of that, I had beef with God, it felt like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was angry. I wouldn't even say God, it was more so Jesus. Because, like, I was angry with God because I felt like he took my dad from me, in a sense. It felt like I didn't matter as much as a human because I was living a life of earthly things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've never heard my dad listen to secular music. If it wasn't a gospel song, like, it wasn't getting played in the crib, you know? If it was not a gospel song, it was not getting put on. That's just how it is. And also culturally, like, I remember, it's ironic because I don't even wear earrings now. When I was younger, I got earrings. I had my ears pierced, pulled up, visited my dad one summer. He saw the hole. I ain't even had an earring in, but he saw the hole, and but he wasn't happy about that. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, it was a really big deal. And like, I understand because like I was living with my mom. Maybe he felt like he should have had a say in the conversation. But like, it was like stuff like that. Like, it was like, you can't even be at my crib with like that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, luckily he still let me come that summer. You know what I'm saying? I did end up, the trip was cut a little shorter. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that was something that really upset me because by that time, uh, my mom and I had moved out of state, so I was going back and forth. It wasn't just like a trip where we both lived in Jersey. At this point, I already lived in North Carolina, so when I went to go visit him, and I had my ear pierced, that's when it was kind of like, uh-oh. But also, moving to North Carolina, I feel like I did get a little further away from my faith because now I didn't have to go to church every Sunday and stuff like that. But it also felt like the first time that I had some freedom and I could be like a human being, like, or just a kid, you know? Like, Halloween, I actually, like, I dressed up for the first time, like, and did stuff like that, and like went to a friend's house, and I understand as an adult now, like, why they were so strict and they were so against the earthly stuff. But that's where I am now. At the time, it was difficult. It was difficult. And it just felt like it took over my life in even cultural aspects, you know, like couldn't grow my hair out, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like something frowned upon. I don't know if it's just a cultural, like, Jamaican thing, like gala have long hair, so man not have long hair, which just means like girls grow their hair out, like dudes not supposed to, so to speak, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I just felt like it took over my life. And the way that started to manifest itself is I just started to have a deep depression. That's like when it really started. I was angry at the world, and I felt like God didn't like me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like he didn't care for me. Like, he was just like, this isn't someone I care about. Like, get out of here, bro. Like, who are you? Like, you're nothing. You know what I'm saying? So it just made me angry at the world and depressed. But something changed. So after the whole earring incident, I didn't see my dad for a few years. And one day I had a dream that he had died. I got a phone call that he died because I wasn't talking to him. Not only did I not see him, I hadn't talked to him, like, nothing. And then I had a dream that he died. And I woke up, and like, just the feeling of that was just like, whoa. Like, I was like, dang, this anger is weird because if he dies and like this is how our relationship ended, like, that was just like, I don't know, that's not what I wanted, you know? So after a while, I visited him again. And what was interesting is at that point, after visiting him, I got back into my faith, kind of hardcore. it was kind of like a reset, because at this point I moved in with my dad actually after that for a little bit. I was going to a new high school. So it felt like a complete reset. You know, new kid, new school, just everything was completely new. So everything was so new that it just felt like a fresh start, so to speak. At that point, I was just like going hard, like I wouldn't curse, I wouldn't watch anything ungodly, wouldn't participate in smoking or drinking or anything like that. But then I realized I was really doing that for like my dad's approval, like wanting to be someone that like he liked. And it wasn't like I could be like, see, look, I'm not smoking, I'm not sinning, I'm not. It was like, bro, what you mean? Like, that's what's expected of you, the kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So then at that point, I feel like after a while, I got kind of burnt out on it because it wasn't genuine. So then I felt, but it didn't just drop off all at once. It was like over time. Maybe there was more of a bit of that stray in our relationship, and over time, as life got more serious, I'm getting older, having like more problems with like maybe women, like hormones, I don't know, everything's just like different, you know what I'm saying? So at that point I'm kind of like going further. And I would say when I got to the furthest I strayed away, what's interesting is it wasn't that I strayed away from God. It was I strayed away from Christ, because I always had a love for God and the universe and this thing deeper. And to be honest, I was also like experimenting with like psychedelics and stuff. So like I knew like, bro, this life, what we call like this experience, is something deeper. You know what I'm saying? And I lived a life during this time that I think many would consider sinful, especially because I still had such an obsession with religion in terms of my art and music. So a lot of things were just blasphemous at times, you know what I'm saying? With just the understanding of not having the respect for Christ. At the time, though, I would say I didn't know the story of Christ per se. I knew, how you grow up and you know stories, but like you don't know them for yourself. You just know everything that people kind of tell you. You know what I'm saying? And at the time, I would say, I was living a life that people would consider sinful. Not like I was like stealing from people, hurting people, blah blah blah. But I was having fun. I was partying. I was having fun. But I'm not gonna sit here and say that there's not a price tag for all that fun. There definitely is. And then where do I find myself today? So I went through that time of depression, which is something that I don't struggle with nearly as much as I did in the past. I've gone through therapy, medication, stuff like that, but all of those felt more like temporary solutions. And after trying everything and feeling like nothing was working, I started leaning back on my faith. Started leaning back into God and Christ and stuff. I had a moment of even considering Muslim. Excuse me, the faith of Islam. Just felt like, okay, maybe that's the direction I need to go in. And the reason being is because, I watch a lot of UFC, and the Muslim dudes are so disciplined, dedicated, locked in, and that's what I always felt that I was lacking. That deeper connection, that deeper locking in. That's what I really felt that I was lacking with my religious experience. And I felt like if I was Muslim, I was doing Ramadan, blah blah blah, I'd be more locked in. And I had friends who were Muslim too, and like they were so disciplined and dedicated, and they was on the Quran, you know what I'm saying, like they were really about it. But then one of my homies invited me to his church. It was a non-denominational church, right? I've been to a couple church. I went to Elevation. It wasn't really for me. No disrespect. I think Stephen Furtick is like a pretty charismatic guy, and I like how he delivers his message. But I didn't go to the Ballantyne location, so I pulled up and he was on the screen, and it was just like, I could have watched this at the crib. Like, how you gonna ask me for offering and you're not even here, dog? I don't know. It just felt a little weird, So this one, it wasn't like that per se. But like I said, I'm used to coming from a Pentecostal church. So when I pulled up to a non-denominational one, I just felt like, was this serious? Like, you know what I'm saying? It felt, the first time I went, it felt more like a TED Talk. But then I started realizing, like, I'm actually learning. I feel like I would go to services where someone would be preaching, and they would read a little thing out the Bible and then kind of like go off on like their own interpretations or life lessons and metaphors and stuff like that. But when I went here, it felt like, oh, I'm actually learning about this person in the Bible, and that inspired me to pick up my own Bible and start reading it. And you get through. What was crazy is like all the stories about in the Bible, not the stories with Jesus, but like just the other stories of all the stuff that happens, bro. It happens in like the first 30 pages. Like all the things that people be spitting at you, bro. It happens so early in the book. I was truly flabbergasted. I was like, yo, these stories are back to back. I thought there was like more stuff going on in between them, but like, nah, they told you all the main points, you know what I'm saying? And it was also crazy because it started making me realize, like, dang, some people be preaching Bibles, but like they be stopping. Like they don't get through the whole story. Like they be stopping, like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then, I don't know if you guys are interested in that story, because it is a little dicey, you know what I'm saying? But if y'all interested in reading it, talking about it, put it in the comments, and maybe we'll get into that. But yeah, maybe get into reading my Bible. And then when I got to the book of Exodus, I believe, and started reading the story of Moses, I was like, whoa, Moses was a sinful guy, so to speak, you know what I'm saying? But God still used him to lead people because of his faith. And then I started noticing that there were plenty of flawed people that God would use. I used to think that I had to be like the perfect person, you know what I'm saying? And because I wasn't, I had to figure it out without God or try to earn his love and approval. And like me just believing in him, like that ain't matter. Like, okay, you believe in me, so what? You know what I'm saying? I thought like he's like, like you gotta be a straight A student to really rock with me. And then once I started realizing that there was this theme of flawed individuals who had strong faith that God would use, it just made me realize like that my faith is everything almost, like that's the biggest part of the relationship, so to speak. And that gave me hope, made me feel like God could have a plan for me. And so during this time, this is a little more recently, but not super recent, but probably about going on a year or so now. But back then, I started watching The Chosen. Loved it. I was like, oh, they made Jesus not a square. Like he's not like a I always felt like he was depicted honestly kind of like a dweeb, you know, like just like not like obviously he's like the nicest greatest guy ever, but he didn't seem like somebody I wanted to kick it with, you know what I'm saying? Like he seemed kind of like too stoic, like bro, too stiff, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, like even sometimes reading the Bible, like bro, do be seeming kind of stiff, but like I appreciated the depiction of him that really humanized him as like a loving person. Because you could, I get it, you know, like of course he loves you, he died for you, but you could have, let's look at a father figure, right? You could have a father who goes out, busts his butt for you, and goes to work and does all this and that, but if you don't feel loved by that person, it hit different. You get what I'm saying? Like, if your dad does everything, but like he don't be like, I love you, like hug me, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, he's not that kind of person. Like all that other stuff, the sacrifice just hits different. So seeing Jesus depicted as like a very loving, friendly guy, you know what I'm saying? I thought that was pretty sick. But then I also saw that some people who I look up to, who are Christian, did not like it. They were not a fan of the show, which made me curious. Like, I wonder what it is that they don't like about it. And as I started reading into it, into like what they don't like about it, it's the fact that it's not directly what the Bible says. And I understand that because there's a quote from the show where they do say, the producers do say, this is an interpretation, not a replacement of the Gospels. So before watching the show, I was trying to go from the beginning of the Bible and work my way to the Gospels. So at that point, I had not touched the Gospels yet. So for me, that was actually my introduction to the Gospels. I was still learning about Abraham, Moses, and I thought these dudes were pretty like solid. You know what I'm saying? I was really rocking with them. I didn't even get to JC yet. You know what I'm saying? So that was my introduction to it. So then it made me go and start to read the Gospels, and then I did notice like, okay, there are aspects that they are adding in that were not at all true. You know, that's a video for another day too. We could get that could be its whole video, like, you know, thoughts on The Chosen. Like I said, if these are things you guys want to talk about, let me know. Put them in the comments. But yeah, it made me read, and I think it was still good to have that idea, not the character, not the human being Jonathan who played Jesus, but the energy of that made reading the Gospels a little better. This is definitely a spoiler. They definitely made Matthew in The Chosen autistic. Not that that's bad, but like that was kind of crazy. They were just like, we think this dude's probably like autistic. I just say that because, you know, Matthew does have a good book, thorough, could be. I'm not here to deny. I'm not here to deny or claim. I'm just saying that that's what they did in the show. Yeah, but that in general helped me grow my faith, you know, reading the Gospels, understanding the faith in general. And what was crazy is once I started applying Jesus' teachings, bro, like my life kind of started falling into place, just a little and little more each day. And yeah, you know, right now, as is where we are, there's still days where my faith is really tested, but thus far, I would say God has not let me down. Even when I look back at my life where I felt like he wasn't there, I realized like things could have been so much worse. He did not let me down. So yeah, yo, I'm gonna pray for us real quick, you know what I'm saying? God, thank you for bringing us here today. If we're all here at the end of this video, thank you for bringing the right people who needed to be here to this end of the video. I ask that you continue to have a place in our lives and do what you feel is fit and open our eyes to the things that you would like us to see. In Jesus' name I pray to you. Amen. Yo, guys, you can check me out on Instagram and TikTok. Semaj Sinclair, SEMAJSINCLAIR. Again, SEMAJSINCLAIR. You know what I'm saying? Hit me on the gram. I respond to all messages on Instagram. And this is a disclaimer. I am not a Christian content creator. I'm a content creator who is Christian, which just means my content is not 100% just about Christ, Christianity, God, stuff like that. You know, it's just about my authentic life journey, and this is an aspect of it. So this is something that I will talk about and share. But I'm a musician, I'm a martial artist, I'm an entrepreneur, and there's a lot of things that come in between there, you know. You know, even musician, martial artist. Now I'm just yapping. Even as a musician and a martial artist, that's just art in general. I love art. I love art. That's a part of what helps me love God, because God is the ultimate artist. The ultimate artist. You know what I'm saying? But this is actually my first video where I'm speaking about this kind of stuff. So hopefully this is received well. Hopefully I spoke well and brought you through the story well enough and articulated myself well enough, and you guys got a better understanding of me. Hopefully this got to the person that it needed to get to and did what it needed to do. Maybe I don't even know what that is. Hopefully God just uses me in the way that he sees fit. Same to you guys. Hit me up on Instagram if you enjoyed this one, man, or girl, whoever you may be, you know what I'm saying? All right, peace out.